Hello, Jill, and welcome to the podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing terrific. Thank you. How about you?
I'm doing wonderful and doing even better now that you are here. Uh, now, Jill, you and I have known each other for a while, and unbeknownst to you, I've known about you, as you probably would guess, from a long time before we even met from your materials. But for
Thank you.
people listening who are unfamiliar with you and your work, could you just give us like the 1 minute overview of who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So I'm a publicity expert. I've written 4 books, including Guerrilla Publicity and the Profit of Kindness. And to that end, I run kindness circles and media mastery intensives and really just help people create visibility and get out there to get more attention and be seen and heard. So I've been doing that, gosh, over 25 years and loving it and working with entrepreneurs of all types.
And that's fantastic. And what I love about podcasts like this and about groups like the National Speakers Association is I think even back before I became a speaker, back when I was running an improv group trying to figure out how to get the word out, I started reading all the Guerrilla books and I read Guerrilla Publicity. And then all of a sudden, like years later, we just happened to meet at a conference and then we chat. And so just how did you sort of get into this whole publicity thing?
Well, it actually started in the music business because I worked as the director of promotion and publicity, actually at 4 independent record labels. And super great news about that is it taught me a tremendous amount of and about publicity. Like, really, it's all about perception. If you think about this, publicity begins from the minute you walk out your door into the Zoom room, into the places that we are every day, whether it's out for coffee or networking or hanging out in Zoom rooms, you're always doing publicity. And I think, honestly, if people get that, it makes a tremendous difference.
Well, that's a really interesting point, and that kind of brings up two questions, which I will ask one and try to remember the other one. Um, but you when we first connected about this podcast, I'm like, oh well, I talk a lot about change, and Jill's topic is publicity, so I'm like, does it fit? But the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, this whole idea of PR and the image you're putting out there is almost more important when you're dealing in a crisis or in a time of change. And do you agree with that, or kind of how do you see those two working together?
Well, the truth is, most of my clients don't need crisis PR. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
reality is, any change you're going through as an entrepreneur, as a business person, you've got to be telling people what you do and, frankly, why they should care, right? Because it's not about what you do, it's about why they should care. So, the wonderful thing when you're going through change is to create another publicity story. And by the way, it could be about change.
Mm-hmm.
Change is, as we know, the name of the day, change is what's going on everywhere for everyone right now. So why not talk about it and why not let it be you? That's how I feel. It's like, get your expertise out there and let it be you.
Well, let's talk a little bit tactically then, because I don't know about people listening. I know for me, I hear publicity, and I still have that 30-year-old mentality, and I immediately think press release, right? But I'm assuming there's, especially in this day and age, it goes well beyond press release. So when you're saying kind of get your story out there, what are the avenues, and how do you recommend like people go about? I know it's a giant topic, so I don't need the whole thesis about it, but just kind of what are some of the ways that people can start shifting how they think about publicity and getting their story out there?
Well, I think the real thing is the focus on, first, what's your message? Like, really, what's key for you and who do you want to reach? Because we got to talk to them, right? This is, and a mistake, honestly, that most people make is they too much talk about what I call themselves or beat the chest publicity. That's
Mm-hmm.
not what we're after here. What we're after is instrumental stories that make a difference for others, right? And giving value and benefit to others. In fact, when I wrote Guerrilla Publicity, which is the book you read, one of the things I was blessed to do was talk to media across the world. And Entrepreneur Magazine, for instance, said to me, we almost don't care what you do. What we want to know is what's in it for our readers. And
Mm.
so abstract that to readers, viewers, and listeners, and let's go with the pitch, which is really about the message. That's what it comes down to.
Okay. Well, then, what I think might be helpful is if we engage in what I call in this podcast, free consulting for Avish. So I'm coming out with a new book in a month, or at the time we're recording this, I don't know when this is going to drop. It may or may not be out already. But, from a macro standpoint, obviously, so I'm doing, LinkedIn, posting little excerpts and, trying to make a launch team and whatnot. But, what are some of the big things that people like me miss when it comes to getting the word out there? What should I be thinking about in terms of getting the message out that, hey, I've got this book, it's valuable, it's on change, and I think people would benefit from it?
Well, the first thing is to get, first of all, congratulations,
Oh,
and I'm
thank you.
excited for you. Yay. And of course, a book is a wonderful thing. Many of my clients don't have books. So you want to think about whatever it is you're launching, whether it's a book or a program or a new service for your consulting or whatever it is that you're doing. The question is, what and why do people care? So one of the things I step back and ask and work with my clients is, what's the problem out there, right? What's the problem out there? We want to identify that, because then OU experts who are launching the programs, writing the books, etc., you're the experts running your business. You're the experts, right? Because perhaps, like, I had a coach and she was just starting a business, and through publicity actually grew her business with prospects and referrals. That's the power of what publicity does. So I also want to say that publicity is not social media. So that's nice that you're doing things on social media, but it is not publicity. Publicity is about getting the media, print, radio, television, blogs, podcasts, to start interviewing you. And I would start with podcasts just because it's easier and simpler for you.
And I think, you hear the strategy a lot, get on podcasts and, you're borrowing someone else's audience, which is great. Where do people begin with that? Is it just like, hey, do a Google search, find a podcast and shoot them an email? Or is there like more nuance to it?
Well, honestly, it can be that simple. I
Mhm.
like Podmatch. Podmatch is great because it's a matching service and it's simpler to find people. I would tend to do that. There are Facebook groups that specialize it, but Podmatch is a really great place to start with your topic. And again, remember this question: why should people care?
Mm.
That's what you got to talk to. So even when you're pitching podcasts, our focus today, for example, is helping people with their publicity. And same thing when you're talking to podcast hosts. It's like, well, why would they care about having you? Podcast hosts like you, Avish, want to give value and benefit to your listeners, right? So everybody coming on has got to speak to that.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Let me ask a slightly different question. This is the second question I alluded to before. I remembered it. Um, it sounds like we're talking about if you're a consultant, an entrepreneur, a business owner. But I speak a lot. A lot of my audience are employees, HR professionals, accountants, that sort of thing, who might be listening. Is there a place for this sort of publicity and this approach? If you're quote unquote just an employee, or is this more for just like trying to build and get clients in a business?
Well, I don't think honestly it's as much for employees, although I had a gentleman from Hewlett Packard come to me. You know why? Nobody liked him in who he was working with in his division, and that's PR. Yeah, really. I mean, if people don't like you, guess what? That's public relations, and you need to do some adjustments. But however, if you own a business, you must be doing PR. You must be putting yourself out there to have people connect back to you and realize why it's important, why you're important to them.
So is that for the person listening who's never considered publicity, or maybe just thought blasting on social media was publicity, what would be kind of the first two or three steps to get started down that path? Obviously, I mean, I'm going to put words in your mouth. I guess number one would be to define that thing you said about like what is in it, like who am I trying to reach and what do they want? Now, correct me if I'm wrong about that first one, and if that is the first one, then kind of what is the next kind of step or two they can take?
Yeah, so the first step is, yes, clarifying your message
Mm-hmm.
in my lingo. I think that's really important. Number two, then define who is your audience. Like, really, who's going to use your services, want your products, hire you, all that good stuff. And then the question is, what are they reading, watching, listening to? So I think that's a really good thing. I also have a really kind of, kind of shortcut tactic I call using everything you've got.
Mm-hmm.
That's your ethnicity, your religion. That's focusing in on how can you connect and gain more traction. So I have, for instance, a woman Filipino, and we go out for Stop Asian Hate. She, because of that, got into she was 28 years old at the
Mm-hmm.
time, top 30 under 30 Filipino business journal. That's super great. That led her to speaking on stage with Les Brown and all kinds of publicity that happened because of it. So I really want you to use all parts of who you are. My Hispanic clients use Hispanic Heritage, Awareness Month. My African American clients use Black History Month. You get the point, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
on and so forth. So I just think it's really something that most people miss that can really be a wonderful other way to promote yourself. I call it use everything you've got and then get creative around it. So, for instance, I have a business consultant. She's a mom who has a son who's autistic. We use National Autism Month
Mm-hmm.
to talk about being a mom, being in business. How do you do all that? How do you manage and juggle it with the kinds of things she has to deal with already? Can you get that?
Mm-hmm.
And so that is helpful for National Autism Month. So one thing I'm going to encourage all of you to do, and this is a great resource, here's your hot tip too, and that is check out nationaldaycalendar.com. Really good resource. Will direct you immediately to holidays and special times where, depending on what you're doing, will show up quickly.
That's it's so interesting about using everything you've got, because even just as we were talking, I realized, I've been thinking about change and who wants to talk about change, or, improv is my background. But then as you were talking about that, I realized that, I live in Philadelphia, and I went to the University of Pennsylvania for my undergrad. And every month I get this alumni magazine called the Pennsylvania Gazette. I very rarely read it. But as you're saying that, I'm like, oh, that's like a part of me that I don't really ever think about anymore. But I could reach out to them and be like, hey, I'm a Penn alum, and this is an interesting thing I'm doing that people might be interested in. I've got a book. And so, yeah, that is such a great.
Well, and Avish, if I may say so, that's one of my strategies. We actually do in my publicity media mastery intensive. We actually send out an announcement, and guess what? Your alumni magazine is a great one of. It's on the list, and
Mm-hmm.
it's one of the great places to actually promote and create that visibility structure. Let me just say, I'll just give me as an example. I kept doing this. I graduated at a university in Detroit, and guess what? Next thing I know, I had a big article, and I was teaching the alumni. Like, how great is that on publicity? And that's because I kept sending them announcements. And your local or university alumni magazine, whether and do grad, undergrad, wherever you graduated from, is a great place to get publicity, and it's free. Publicity is free. I just want to underline that for
Mm-hmm.
everybody so you understand how powerful of a subject matter it is. And let me just share, anyone reading that magazine, you'll get great clients. So if I may, I'm going to go one step further. That somebody saw my announcement. It was when one of my books was coming out. He said, and it was actually the third edition of Guerrilla Publicity that I made an announcement about in the Alumni magazine, exactly what we're talking about. I get this call from San Antonio, Texas, and a gentleman who was in class with me. He said, you know what? I read your announcement. Congrats on the book. I bought the book, he said, and I see in your bio that it says you're a consultant, and I own a shoe manufacturing company, and I don't know how to get the word out about our great shoes. And guess what? He flew his wife, who's the director of marketing. So he flew his wife into San Francisco, and well, that was, let me just say, a $6,000 VIP day. Like, isn't that great?
Yeah,
Now
just
that's
from
what I'm talking about.
no,
The
that's
power of publicity, the power. Yeah.
so. I want to just touch upon one thing you said. You said because I kept sending announcements. Um, so are you saying that like you would send things to the alumni magazine and they wouldn't bite, they wouldn't do anything with it, but you kind of kept the persistence, or is it like every time you send something they would use it?
Usually every time. I have a system, one of my systems in publicity. So for sending out announcements, it's every 60 days
Hmm.
because anything more than that, like you don't want to be the boy who cried wolf, right? You want consistency and persistency. That's really important with publicity. So one of my systems is every 60 days, you send out an announcement. That would be in your case about your book. In my case, it was a launch of a program,
Hmm.
and that's what gets good results.
Okay, let's pause for a second. You cut out there for a second, so can we just take that back? We'll pick it up where you started saying every 60 days you send out an announcement.
Yes. So every 60 days, I send out an announcement. This is part of a system of publicity, and that's 6 times a year, just for those to make your math easy, right? And so, what's super great about that is that the consistency and persistency of your name recognition actually gets results. And then it's not like too much, right? It's
Hmm.
every 60 days. All these places that I think are really good to send it to, and we actually have templates and lists of where do you send this, is about keeping things to free announcements, and it's localized. It's a local strategy usually, plus where you graduated and the networking groups you belong. People
Mm.
forget to publicize themselves in the associations they're part of, which also often have newsletters or email blasts or whatever they have.
Hmm.
Hey, guess what? That's another great place to get publicity.
Well, that's fantastic. And we are coming close to the end of the time, but I wanted to make sure to ask you about something completely different. Because I went to your website to research, I guess because you really established yourself as such an expert on publicity, I didn't even realize this whole other topic you have about kindness, which I think is so interesting and so powerful. So could you just share a little bit on kind of what that is all about?
Absolutely. So it was kind of a surprise to me too. It's one of those books that kind of landed in my lap from something someone said to me about my own kindness. And then frankly, I said to my publishers, what do you think? And they go, great idea. Next thing I know, a book is out in 9 months. I mean, it was fast,
Wow.
which, it was a wonderful coincidence, a wonderful synchronicity. But let me just say, the really special thing about kindness is, one day I was looking at all my books and I thought, oh yeah, kindness gets you great publicity, right?
Mm.
And it actually is almost a competitive edge if you're kind. And the truth is, we need it now more than ever in our world. So people will remember you for that. They appreciate that, and kindness works in business. It works for you and your best self, being your best self. Most importantly, I'm big on what I call a conscious act of kindness every single.
Mm. So just taking like one conscious act of kindness a day is so powerful. Um, so I'm just curious, are you out like speaking and coaching and consulting on kindness out there? Is that like a business model you have, or is it just kind of this book you had a passion for and it's out in the world and you just want to spread the message?
Well, I do kindness circles, and I'd love to put the link into
Hmm.
the people listening here because they're completely free and they're once a month. And we have a community of incredible people, over 1,000 now, who are
Wow.
committed to kindness, who show up once a month. And that is just really good. And for that, I'll just say the link, maybe you can post it
Yep.
later, is jilllublin.com/kindness circles, plural. Come on in and let's practice kindness and focus every single month.
Wow. Well, that is really cool, and I do think kindness is so useful, and it ties into some of the stuff. I like the yes and versus yes but is my kind of theme, and I find yes and to be the kind approach, the kind response. I think it's so powerful. Um, well, Jill, I want to
Love
thank
that.
you. We're gonna finish up here. I'm gonna ask you one final question to finish up. Before I get to that, if people do want to learn more about you, engage in your services about publicity, or join a kindness circle, what are some of the best ways they can find and connect with you?
Well, I recommend you go to a wonderful, almost free, just really fantastic gift I'm going to give you, which is jilllublin.com/start. And it's an opportunity to actually be live with me, ask me questions. I'm going to go through actual messages and practices